Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me for my latest video here on YouTube. Make sure you like and comment on this video as well, and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube, and download the Inside The Mavs podcast wherever you get podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can check it out on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, the official Mavericks podcast of 97.1 The Freak. You can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. Trade talks continue to heat up as we get closer to the February 8th NBA trade deadline, and your Mavericks are in no shortage of rumors when it comes to who they are connected to as we get closer and closer to that NBA trade deadline. Can the Mavericks find a way to improve their basketball team, knowing that they need some frontline help to be able to move forward in the Western Conference? It's been an interesting season for this team, obviously, with the amount of injuries that they have dealt with, trying to ensure that they are remaining close to the top six, that by the time we get toward the end of the regular season, they are able to secure a top six spot in the Western Conference. But does that mean between now and by the time we get to February 8th, they will have made a move to make their team that much better? Things continue to heat up around the trade rumor mill when it comes to the Mavericks, specifically for a guy in Kyle Kuzma. Various reporting continues to come out and surface with the Mavericks being connected to the Washington Wizards forward. Mark Stein, in his latest Substack, continues to detail how the Mavericks show continued interest in Kuzma to possibly become a part of the Mavericks. Same thing with Jake Fisher of Yahoo Sports as well, detailing the same, that the Mavericks continue to remain interested not only in Kuzma, but the likes of Dorian Finney-Smith, PJ Washington, Andrew Wiggins, among others. So you sense a theme here as the Mavericks are looking to improve their front court while finding some size and some scoring and potentially some defense along the wing as well. And I had a chance to talk to a Mavs source about Kyle Kuzma, and they believe that they have the leadership in the hierarchy to absorb Kyle Kuzma as a player and all that it comes with. And you look at Kuzma so far this year, averaging 22 points per game. He's 6'9", 221, 28 years old. He's got an attractive contract that continues to descend throughout the life of the 4-year deal. And when you look at what he's done over his last 10 games, shooting over 45% from the field, averaging over 21 points per game, and a guy that's shooting nearly 90% from the free throw line, but also giving nearly 8 rebounds and also 5 assists per night. So look, Kuzma is a guy that can provide you a lot of different things. And for a guy that also was part of a championship team back with the Los Angeles Lakers in 2020, a very interesting note and wrinkle with this as well. Kyle Kuzma was a part of that team, and you remember who was on that coaching staff for the Los Angeles Lakers at the time. Your current head coach for the Dallas Mavericks, Jason Kidd. That same source told me that Kuzma seems to be a big fan of Jason Kidd as head coach of this team as well. So when you look at it from a continuity standpoint, Kuzma would be working with someone who's extremely familiar with, obviously, in Jason Kidd, playing alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving as well, add some size on the front line. The question will now be, what are you willing to give up in order to get Kuzma? We've heard previous reporting that the Washington Wizards were looking for at least 2 first-round picks. They may be willing to come down on that as we get closer to the February 8th trade deadline. Now, here's the thing for Washington. They're in a position where they don't necessarily have to move Kuzma. Yes, this team has not been good this season in terms of the Washington Wizards. Terrible record. Have already made a change at head coach. But at the same time, they have a lot of attractive pieces, whether it be a Daniel Gafford, a Tyus Jones, a Denny Avdia, and, of course, their most important piece and player, Kyle Kuzma. So they can afford to kind of take their time and look at what's out there in terms of certain offers, unlike the Brooklyn Nets, who are out here rejecting first-round picks, multiple first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith. Washington may be able to deal and play a little bit more ball with you, depending on what the Mavericks are looking to offer. Could that mean a guy like Josh Green or Jaden Hardy and a first-round pick that the Mavericks do have available to be able to move? And is Kyle Kuzma worth that price to move all of that in order to pair him alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and potentially increase his ceiling? And that's another aspect of this as well. How much more does the ceiling increase for the Mavericks this season with the addition of Kyle Kuzma? where does that put them in the Western Conference? Does that get them to a top 4 potential seed in the West? Does it ensure that you're definitely a top 6 seed in the West? Or does it keep you somewhere where you are right now in terms of the play-in situation? I happen to think with the addition of Kyle Kuzma that you would solidly be able to get yourself into the top 6 of the West by the time we get to the end of the regular season, so that you're not worried about that dreaded play-in. And for the future as well, a guy that would be on an attractive contract that still at 28 years of age still has plenty of time to grow and get comfortable with this team alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Not to mention Derek Lively II coming along right now as your team's third best player. So a young nucleus I'm talking about with Luka, also Derek Lively II and Kyle Kuzma around a veteran in Kyrie Irving, that could be and make a lot of sense if you're looking at it. And from a fit standpoint, it does make sense for the Mavericks. A guy with size who can put the ball on the floor, can score, can knock down threes at a decent rate. And if you can get the defensive upside for him, which we saw from him when he was in Los Angeles, that provides you length and athleticism on the perimeter to guard multiple positions. And Kuzma may be motivated to be able to do that. And with the leadership and the hierarchy in place, they may be able to get the most out of him. And that's what you have to weigh for the Mavericks. Not just the compensation that you have to give up to get Kuzma, but are you in a position to get the most out of him based on what he is as a player? Yes, on the offensive end is going to put together really nice offensive nights, night in and night out, whether it be shooting the ball from 3 or putting the ball on the deck and getting to the free throw line. But on the defensive end, where this team severely needs help in terms of perimeter defense and a guy that can guard multiple positions when he's right and when he's in the right headspace. So there's a lot to consider when you look at a move for Kuzma. I would happen to think if you're willing to make that quote-unquote all-in move, you go ahead and try to make the deal for Kuzma. If you're looking to possibly for a small minor move, that could mean a PJ Washington, who is obviously cheaper, a Dorian Finney-Smith, who we know we have obvious familiarity with, Royce O'Neale, whom the Brooklyn Nets may be willing to take a second-round pick or two to move off of Royce O'Neale. We've heard reporting from the New York Post that the Brooklyn Nets are wanting to move off one, if not both, Dorian Finney-Smith and Royce O'Neale by the time we get to the NBA trade deadline. So that could put some pressure on Brooklyn to take a deal that they may feel like is not going to be what they thought they were initially going to get. If they're out here rejecting 2 first-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith, I don't know what kind of realistic expectations Brooklyn has right now when it comes to who they may try to get or what they may try to get in exchange for Royce O'Neale and Dorian Finney-Smith. But the point remains the same. As we are less than a week from the NBA trade deadline, all of these conversations will continue to heat up, and it feels like the Mavericks are trying to zero in on Kyle Kuzma based on what we've seen in the reporting and the amount of conversation that is around Kuzma really for quite some time now. And if the Mavericks are serious about making this team better this year, then maybe that is the move that they need to make while still considering what needs to come in the future when it comes for Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and what that looks like ultimately from a chemistry and a growth standpoint. But if Kuzma is ready to come to a team that will have a chance to win down the road, not just this year, but down the road as well as his contract continues to go on, playing for a head coach that he knows how to work with and how to play with and for, it may make a lot of sense, much like how the Dallas Mavericks were able to acquire Kyrie Irving. Yes, a little bit different situation, obviously, for him and the situation that he was dealing with in Brooklyn, but at the same time, familiarity and continuity. Kyrie Irving loved Jason Kidd. He loved the idea of working with Nico Harrison, who he's had a long-standing relationship with, and the ability for him to be able to now be happy and peaceful in Dallas. You've seen when he's been able to be healthy what kind of player he is for this team. Kuzma could be the same for the Mavericks. Familiarity, continuity, and a chance to have a fresh start in a place where he would contribute to a team that has playoff aspirations, not just to get to the playoffs, but try to make a run in the West as well, which is obviously extremely deep with the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the reigning NBA champion Denver Nuggets, the Clippers, who have been fantastic since mid-November, and others. This team would need to make a splash in order to try and compete with some of those teams. Kuzma may be that splash. And for all the folks who want to see the Mavericks make a move, they are now in position possibly to do it. The question will be, Are they willing to strike based on what's available to them? And what does that mean ultimately for their future? And if they decide that Kuzma is worth it, then moving on from that first-round pick, they already owe one, of course, to Brooklyn in the Kyrie Irving trade. This would be the team that you would have, and that's the other part that you have to consider. When you trade for a Kyle Kuzma and you give up the compensation in order to do it, this is going to be the team that you're going to be looking at for a while, especially when you start looking at the way things are set up from a luxury tax and a tax apron standpoint. See my episode with Eric Pincus of Bleacher Report, NBA Insider and Capologist, about how those things work and what that would look like. So we will see as we get closer to the February 8th NBA trade deadline if all the smoke is actually leading to a fire that leads Kyle Kuzma to Dallas, or if all this talk is just that, talk. So far, we haven't seen a lot of activity. We've seen some big trades go down, whether it be OG Anunoby going to the New York Knicks, Pascal Siakam going over to the Indiana Pacers, Steven Adams being traded over to the Houston Rockets. There have been some trades that we have seen, but not quite the activity that I thought we would see, especially leading up to the trade deadline. That could change here very, very soon, and the Mavericks could be in the middle of that. We will see if that is necessarily the case as we move forward to the NBA trade deadline. But all of this will continue to heat up. Kyle Kuzma and the Mavericks seems like a match made for the two of them. Now, could a deal be struck in order to get it done? And if so, things will be very interesting for the Dallas Mavericks post All-Star break. Again, you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. I'm your Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Make sure you download and subscribe to the Inside The Mavs podcast, wherever you get podcasts for free. Again, give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. Also, make sure you like and comment on this video as well, and subscribe to my channel here at Kevin Gray Sports. And I'll talk to you later. Peace.